This is Justine Newbarth, writer of episode 1010, The Postman. You're listening to the Blacklist Exposed on Golden Spiral Media.
To be guilty or not to be guilty? That is the question on this week's award-winning The Blacklist Exposed podcast. Greetings, one and all. I'm Agent Troy Heinrichs.
And I am Special Agent Chuck Gibbons, and I'm wondering if Cooper will ever be able to keep Red in check. Thanks for joining us yet again on the final season of The Blacklist for number 173, The Postman, written by Justine Newbarth and directed by Kevin Berlanti. Show notes and other intel for this episode of The Blacklist Exposed can be found at theblacklistexposed.com.
Oh my gosh, Aaron's voice sounds so different this week. What's up, Chuck?
Great to be here.
Oh, man. If most of you don't know Chuck Gibbons, Chuck is a stalwart in the Facebook community, in our Facebook group. Chuck has some really great write-ups and analyses of the episodes. And so we thought, hey, Aaron's gone for the weekend celebrating some birthday fun. And we said, let's have Chuck come on. Let's just we'll mix it up. I'll have some other fans come on in. So just glad you're here, Chuck. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what got you into the Blacklist in the first place. And say us. Say it was us, the podcast.
Well, I wish it was, to be honest. I tuned into the Blacklist because I'm a huge James Spader fan. To me, I'd say, Alan Shore is still my favorite TV character of all time, especially his work in The Practice. And so I came for the Spader, and then, the pilot episode, they had me hooked. I remember looking at somebody, I've never completely finished Lost, but I said after the first episode, I'm like, these guys could be one of the best shows ever if they really tell this story right. I think over 8 seasons, they took a bit long to get there, but I think they really did. I thought it was a fantastic tale with a lot of good twists. Obviously, the last couple of seasons, it felt a little bit like an epilogue, but, I think they're going to finish strong. I really like it, and, I like where they're going and the possibilities they have for the ending.
It's amazing. I love when we all sat down originally. It was on the old TV Talk network back in the day. And then we said, wow, it has that Silence of the Lambs feel, right? With the box, and I'll only work with Agent Keen. And it's 10 years. Whoever would have thought 10 years? You didn't even have kids 10 years ago.
No, it's true. And I've got three young ones now, and I still manage to find time. But I was going to say about the podcast, I really wish I'd have found you guys sooner, because I've been looking. In the first couple of years, I kind of looked around. I'm not that internet savvy, and I just couldn't find a community because I'm like, who else is tracking all of these questions? Who else has answers? And I just never found it. Then eventually I got to the end of season 8, and I'm like, okay, I have to find a community now. And I finally found your podcast, and I rewatched the entire series and listened to your entire podcast over the summer between season 8 and 9. And it was fantastic because it was like, finally, now I have a community. And it's been great plugging into the Facebook group. But again, it's been a challenge because, it's not like season 9 and 10 are anybody's favorite seasons. So, it's fun to analyze, but at the same time, the mythology's gone. And, in a lot of ways, they've kind of wound down and kind of, wandered in the last couple seasons.
Fascinating that you found us after the season 8 finale. So did you have a confirmation for you after the season 8 finale, or did you change your mind at all after you listened to us?
I'd say I was like, I'm pretty sure that's what they're telling me. But my biggest frustration was that they weren't telling Liz.
Right.
And that's when I first listened, the first podcast I listened to yours was the season 8 finale, and you guys expressed the same frustration where it's like, it seems clearer to the audience than it does to Liz. And I was really annoyed. I thought, she at least deserves. And whether it was a retcon in season 9 or not, at least, they found a way to tell us actually she knew before she died.
Got it. And then were you surprised as you went back and listened to the podcast, how many clues there were? Do you feel like the story was there the whole time, or do you feel like they changed it as they went along?
No, I 100% think the story was there the whole time. To be honest, as much as I said I wish I'd have found you at the beginning, in another sense, I like the fact that I was completely shocked, whereas you knew feels like in season 1, that this was a potential for the story. For me, I, fell for some of the traps all the way along the way. Is he your dad? Oh, he's an imposter. Who is he? Who's Ilya? So in some ways, I was able to fall into their traps easier than I think I would have if I'd been listening to you the whole time.
Yeah, that's kind of the fun part and the downfall. I think we talk about Westworld that Aaron and I did. It's like if we had not done that podcast, like I think by the end of season 1 of Westworld, we would have just been blown away. It's probably one of the best single seasons of television ever is Westworld season 1. But because we had all this help, right, from the community and chatting and whatnot, it's like, oh yeah, I could totally see that being a possibility. And then of course it becomes the actual thing. So I don't know, sometimes we're a detriment to our own fun and happiness. And then at the same time, it's super fun and happy to do this analysis and hang out and see where things go.
Well, was it Lost or was it another show where I heard that they got wind of their original plan being so well known that they actually switched it?
Yep, that was Lost for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Confirmation from people that actually wrote for the show.
Yeah, so in a way, I like that. That didn't happen with the Blacklist. I feel like, they took a lot of detours that they didn't know. Obviously, some of the characters that I think Aaron would have preferred that Tom died in the pilot. But I personally am glad he stuck around for a little while.
For a little while. Season 4 Tom, domestic Tom, different story. But
and also not turning the bones over to Liz. I cannot forgive him for, hey, let's just give it to the FBI who could figure this out. Anyway.
All right. Well, if you're new to the podcast, Chuck is filling in. He'll probably come back a few times yet as we continue on this journey in season 10. But we also do some fun things here on the show. We obviously do our profiling question of the week from last week. Then we move into the case profile, where we break down all things related to the Postman, not Kevin Costner. And then we get into your thoughts in special agent intel down the line. So starting off, we closed up shop last week. We had Red basically duping the post office. Cooper is just pissed off. So what happens next? Is the post office going after Red the rest of season 10? What did the audience say, Chuck?
55% of the audience said yes, and 45% of the audience said no.
So this is fascinating because I figured by season 10, people would be able to look at the show and go, nah, you know what? No, it'll be like Cooper just hanging out. He's going to be super pissed at Red, but he's going to also leave him the Heidi key for the house.
Yeah, I don't know. I certainly was surprised to see him and, Red and Cooper just hanging out in Cooper's house right at the start of the episode. But, I guess I think they leave that possibility open. It's not like, they're all buddy-buddy now. They leave the possibility open to kick that down the road. So I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, I could see the post office going after Red at some point. Yeah.
I mean, and if it's not the post office directly, you still got power-ups like Cooper was talking about. It's like, I can't protect you. If Panabaker comes after you, or the AG comes after you, or the department comes after you, there is going to be hell to pay. That hell to pay still could be coming. So the 55% of you could be technically correct still. It's just not the post office themselves that'll be coming after him.
Yeah, and I'm all for more Panabaker. She's fantastic.
She's so good. So good. So what do we want to talk about for next week there, Chuck?
I guess the question we have for next week is, what are your thoughts on Herbie's big debut?
My vote so far, 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I don't know. 1.5. I'll go for me.
I mean, it gives that Marshall feeling from Alias a little bit. So I kind of dig it. At the same time, it totally doesn't feel like the Blacklist at all.
Yeah, no, I'm all for some comic relief, but, a little bit over the top for me.
Well, are you ready to get into this week's episode, Chuck?
Sure, let's do it. The first comment I had was I was looking back at some of Justine's previous work. This is her 3rd writing credit for the Blacklist, and I thought it was her funniest episode so far. Obviously, the other ones are a little heavier. But the one comment that she had in a previous episode was in the Proteon. She had a funny line where he went to the hotel and the receptionist asked what he was doing. And he said, "Oh, I've got a few days to kill." I'm pretty sure that was a stolen tagline from a Steven Seagal movie.
Hey, but Steven Seagal is America's treasure, even though he's not from America.
Okay.
Steven Seagal versus Chuck Norris. Let's line them up.
Van Damme, can we throw him in there?
Totally. Yeah.
Okay.
That'll work too. All right. Well, before we waste another $400, let's go ahead and get into this week's case profile. All right. We open up in Sussex State Prison. The leader of Al Cavera, the crime syndicate, his name is Lou, takes out rival gang members and a few others with an automatic weapon. What the hell? How did he get the gun into the prison? This is the question we ask, as this week's Blacklister, the Postman, also named Lawrence Nelson, actually is the one who smuggles contraband into prisons. What do you think of this concept, Chuck, of people being able to bring stuff into prison, especially in the way that we find out the way that this is actually being done through drones?
Yeah, wouldn't you think that the windows would be a little bit more secure?
It seemed like it was more plastic, like things you'd use in Legos, and you could pop them out, real easy with your thumbs.
Yeah, but I guess, this works about as well as any prison break movie that we've seen. But yeah, obviously the first scene, you're like, how does he have a gun? Wait, what?
I mean, we already had the problem of people smuggling in stuff in the Lake and Perillos episode and then busting people out of prison. It's like the prison system is really on the downward swing at this point. I mean, they could just promote Dembe could just be a prison warden or something, just, in the blink of an eye because he got into the FBI so fast.
No, Dembe. No, there's no way. That would be too far.
Too far indeed. Well, this is an interesting episode because it does a little bit of flashbacks. We have a guy who's on trial and we're in a jury room. It's about 30 years earlier. And we literally get a 12 Angry Men scenario where 11 people have voted guilty and one person does not vote guilty. And we find out that one person is indeed a young Harold Cooper. Of course, Red totally gave up this case, knowing this backstory and this information.
Yeah, I mean, that scene there, it took them a pretty long time to get to what we knew was going to happen. They just kept teasing it and kept drawing it out. I'm like, okay, show us the young Cooper. Let's see who you chose for young Cooper.
And then this was a Maryland prison. He was released 5 years ago after spending 25 years in prison to make the 30. So at least math still works on the podcast. Lawrence actually shot his boss at their place of business. And now, since disappearing, is making prison lives and those out of prison also unsafe. So the big question was Lawrence actually guilty of the original crime? And Cooper thought no, even after he voted to basically put him away with the rest of the jurors. All this time throughout his life, he still thought that Lawrence was innocent.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was, there is some writing convenience there. I mean, he has to be innocent for the story to work.
Did you like the concept of him and Cooper actually meeting face to face towards the end of the episode?
I thought it was a really good scene. I don't know conceptually it is a rather convenient kind of timing for, this Blacklister. But no, I thought it made for a good scene. I love Cooper, especially when he's humble Cooper. He's clearly realized that, this guy's done 25 years he didn't deserve to do. Wants to help him on that, but he also needs to hold him accountable to, the current crimes he committed.
Well, continuing on with Cooper, he actually goes to the prison and then while he's there finds out that there's this guy, Eugene. And Eugene used to be the old cellmate of Lawrence. And so we found out that Eugene is a chemist. And Lawrence is actually looking to use Eugene in order to make some kind of chemical compound. So the postman Lawrence is actually getting stuff into the building through the drones. I don't understand how you get the drones past the watchtowers, over the fence, over the wall, up to the window. Like someone's got to see a drone coming in. Like that part doesn't ring to me at all. But they get the drones there and they get the information in the compounds to Eugene. He makes this pathogen, this aerosol thing that's actually worse than some of the things that we've seen on the market, almost instant death if inhaled. And then we're all left wondering, what is the plan for this thing? What did you think the plan was?
Yeah, I figured he was going to blow up something. I wasn't sure. I mean, he could go after the post office because he's the postman. But Yeah, obviously, it was a revenge play of some sort. I wasn't sure if he was. Initially, I didn't know that him and the other inmate were buddies. I thought maybe that was a suicide mission. The inmate was going to blow up his own prison, or it was part of an escape. Yeah, at that point, it was tough to tell.
Yeah, at first I thought it was Eugene was going to use it for something, and then when it finally came back out of the prison to Lawrence, the postman, I thought for sure it was, a revenge plot of some kind. I thought it was going to be him coming back to the prison and killing the warden, because it's like, oh, look at that, Cooper's there, Cooper's in danger. It's going to be, we have to save Cooper. It's going to be the thread of this whole storyline. Never saw that he was going to go after the attorney general. That was a nice twist.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think my favorite part of the whole drones, and maybe to answer your question, maybe they had stealth capabilities. I'm not really sure. But Herbie loved them. My favorite was when he was looking at the drone. He's like, "Oh, it's really cool." He's like, "But bad." He's like, "But cool and bad." And I'm like, okay, clearly they're just writing a ROMs lines for Herbie right now. But nonetheless, I thought it was pretty funny.
Well, we find out that this guy, Lawrence, is going after Christopher J., the city prosecutor, back in his trial, who's now the Maryland Attorney General. He's going to basically go into the building and release the toxin into the air ducts. But really cool how they were able to fool the driver, right? Because Red has people all over the city. We know this, right? The maids, the hotels, the cabbies, everything around there that Red has in public service. So trying to find the van and getting that Lawrence kidnapped. I thought that was a really cool sequence about how they stood him up and they opened up the crate and he was going to come out guns blazing, and then totally doesn't realize that he's not where he's supposed to be.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed that we didn't get to see the takedown of the truck. It felt like maybe they're just saving some money on production. But no, it did lead to, as I said, it led to that nice scene with Harold, meeting Larry and being able to chat with him a little bit, and give the staff a little bit more time to have some laughs.
That's interesting you say that, because I think I would like to. I think I'd like to have seen the takedown of the truck too, because it feels like that's more big Blacklist, kind of feel to it. But I really liked he was in the box just getting ready to jump at whoever was going to be there. And then boom, it was the post office. And I was like, whoa, that's totally different. That's kind of cool.
Actually, what if he'd have jumped out and done whatever he was supposed to do? I don't know if it was a suicide mission, but he could have blown up the post office.
Oh yeah, that's true. He could have just released it there. He could have had his finger on the trigger and literally done it the second he came out of the crate. So took a chance on that one, I guess.
Well, it all worked out. They're still here.
We have Red also doing some fun stuff in this episode as well. He has this whole let me help you out and see if I can shake down some trees kind of thing. They actually find Lawrence through Red by him going to a bank. And I don't know how you felt about this, but I thought that maybe Red was a little bit. I feel like Red in the last couple episodes that they finally got him back to form. I don't know what you think, Chuck.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that followed me on Facebook knows that I wasn't a fan of the goat story a couple of weeks ago. I just thought that was still, to me, Sleepy Red. He was still kind of, he was just warming up. And I thought last week he was back to Red when he shot Jing's associate. That was back to Red, and this was back to classic kind of Red writing and Red delivery for me. He went in there. He had a great sort of tale about how he could, set up this guy's mother-in-law. The guy just clearly wasn't following. And he's like, forget it. And he just pulls out the gun. It's like, you know what? I just got to get this done.
Yeah. And it's funny how after 10 years, we've sat and listened to Red's story, and you're just looking at the guy and he's like, huh? And I'm just like, what did you understand, man? He's going to basically set your mom up for life. Just give him the account. You're going to get your head blown off.
Yeah, but he clearly doesn't know, it seems like everybody else in the world knows who Red Reddington is, but this guy clearly doesn't.
Well, basically at the end of the day, Red once again helps everybody save the day. The post office is secure. We have Herbie, who is now part of the task force and working for them. And all in all, I thought this was a fairly great episode. I was thoroughly entertained for the entire 45 minutes.
No, I agree. I thought, this, like I said, except for, the mythology and the cliffhanger, this was a classic kind of early season episode of the Blacklist.
Which is really odd when you think about it, because I feel like we said last week felt like the mid-season finale of a regular typical season. Obviously, we're airing the schedule a little bit odd, right? Because we started in February versus in September. But these feel like here comes the middle six, as we like to call them. The six that basically were standalone episodes, case of the week, didn't really drive the plot or the mythology. We had part A, which was the Wu Jing story. Now we're in those middle six. And then hopefully after those six, we'll get into the end game of the actual final part of the season and the series.
Yeah, I remember when I used to watch 24, I used to say, you know what, this show would be great if they changed it and called it 16. Because they could have done a really tight 16 hours and gotten some sleep at the end of it. But for 24, they always had a few episodes where, they're just clearly dragging it out. It was just clearly filler. And I'm not calling this filler. It's a difference between filler and standalone. As you say, this didn't really drive anything forward, but it was nice. It was just good TV. And you need kind of to come down after last week was, kind of the explosion. As you say, normally you'd have a break between the explosion, but in this case, they just carried on.
Yeah, I think you're just getting people that are going to be nervous because they're like, oh my gosh, or like, we're down to 12, and we still don't know who he is. Well, we know who he is, but some people still don't believe that they know who he is. But yeah, they're just freaking out a little bit, and they want to know, like, where is this going? Where is this ending? What's happening to Agnes? What's happening to Wrestler? What about Wrestler's dude, the plant? Right? There's just so much here that could still be wrapped up that it's almost like the show doesn't need to end, but it is.
Yeah, and I'm with Spader. I would have ended it at season 8, but given that they kept going, I hoped, to be honest, I've been hoping for probably 5 years that they were going to have the final season, because I really think this would have been just a gangbusters 5-season show.
Oh yeah, like that's what we said. Like when you get to that death row in season 6, like that's where it felt like season 6 was the end, and then we got 2 more, and then we got 2 more after that.
Yeah, but that said, we've talked about this, with different shows. It's like every long-standing show or every long-running show has a bit of a lull. And, I like how they wrapped up Wu Jing. I think they could have wrapped that story up a little quicker than they did, but I think they've got plenty of time to wrap up to a pretty strong finish.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes for sure. But that is the case profile for this week for the Postman, a guy who delivered contraband into prisons, wanted to basically help his old cellmate out. The chemist didn't really help him out at all, to basically make a compound to take out the guy who put him behind bars. Pretty straightforward at the end of the day. But there was some other fun stuff throughout the course of the episode, and we do that in our character section, where we start with music. Oh, I guess there wasn't any music again this week. Silence. Sometimes you have to have silence in order to actually have drama and suspense, but the lack of music this season has definitely been one that's been kind of sad. It really when you have the music in the show, it really adds something to the episode.
I prefer the sound of silence to actual silence.
Yeah, especially when it comes from Disturbed. That was such a great use of that during the Tom death in season 5. Chuck's on point. I love it. This is so great. Yeah, but if you do like the music on the show, you can go ahead and get links to the playlist both for Apple and Spotify. They're over on the website at theblacklistexposed.com. So let's talk about some of the other characters and what's going on here. Dembe, he's going to assign Herbie some work because he needs some manpower to sift through the camera footage. And then he goes over to Herbie's house and eats a sandwich that Herbie made for everybody because he thought everybody from the post office was going to be coming. It also turns out that Dembe does like soccer.
See, I'm a big Dembe fan. I've always liked the character. I really liked when they looked like they were heading in a direction of Dembe kind of being Red's savior. I would like them to get back together again before the series ends. I don't know if they're going to go in that direction or not, but I've always liked Dembe. And yeah, he's, his partnership with Herbie is great. he loves the underdog, right? He was similar with Glenn. Like he gravitates towards the underdog or the outcast. He wants to make them feel welcomed. Dembe just seems like a general good guy, except for all of his, criminal deeds that he's done because he had to.
The thing that bothered me is that he said that he liked soccer. And I was just like, wait, didn't Red find you not in the United States? Shouldn't you say that you liked football instead of soccer?
That's a fair question, but we'll assume it was a writing slip up.
There we go. But his buddy Herbie, I think we're gonna have to call him Peaches from now on. I think that's a great nickname for Herbie because he was gonna feed his kid Peaches. But he kept the kid home, and because of that, I don't know if it's just me. Does the post office have some security issues? Because how can someone just literally FaceTime into the meeting without like having a FaceTime meeting set up? Like even Cooper was like, how did he get in here? Like, what is going on with the post office these days?
Well, I mean, how many times has the post office been broken into?
Fair statement. And depending on whatever Red left behind from last week, maybe that was a backdoor thing so Red could call in whenever he wanted to, now that he understands how to use modern technology.
I don't want Red FaceTiming into the post office.
Can you imagine? So he's already doing the video phone calls with Agnes, so it'll come with time. I'm sure it will. But yeah, what do you think of Herbie joining? I mean, he basically is the one that discovers that the drones are the method for the postman moving the contraband. And then every time Herbie's on screen, like the foosball thing is going to be a running joke. Do you like the running joke of the foosball, or do you think that this was like the last time you want to hear about foosball?
Yeah, as I said, I'm kind of on the fence. I mean, he's very much to me a way over the top version of Aram. And I loved Aram. I think everybody loves Aram. And we talk about him being the heartbeat of the show. And I think Herbie's, it's just a bit over the top for me. I think if they dialed it back just a little bit, I think it would really work. I
do like that Dembe and Herbie went out together at the end. I thought it was a cute moment. Like I think on most other TV shows, you were like, oh, that's like the fun ending, but for a Blacklist, before the Blacklist specifically, it was like that felt like completely out of place. I don't know about you.
Yeah, like I said, it's kind of, showing Dembe's softer side, right? And that's, and Herbie, he probably knows Herbie better than anybody else there because he's known Herbie through Red for a long time. And so, it makes me think of guys like Glenn, where, Dembe's always going to try and include the outcast.
For sure. Well, Wrestler, we got him doing just his normal Wrestler stuff, except that we start and end the show pretty much with Wrestler meeting with, we'll call him the Plant, because we said if we ever see him again, there's definitely something up with this guy. But he basically is just meeting with them because he's got about a couple weeks in now. This dealer called him and said, oh, hey, I got some stuff. So he did buy the pills. He never took the pills. And then it was really cool seeing how Wrestler destroyed the pills. And then he basically said he would sit with the Plant until the next meeting. So do you think that they're using this guy? Do you think he's actually a Plant? Do you think there's some story with Wrestler that he's using him to get to know Wrestler better? Or is this a story of, let's look at Wrestler and the things that Wrestler's currently done and how he's overcome his addiction, because there's something Wrestler's going to have to face in the future here going forward?
Well, first of all, when he showed the pills, I mean, the bottle was almost empty, so I thought he was already wasted. But they seem to imply that he didn't take any of the pills and that Wrestler destroyed them. I think it would be more of a twist for him not to be a Plant at this point. I mean, maybe they just go that he's on the straight and narrow just because everybody's expecting him to be, connected somewhere, and who does he work for? Does he work for Panabaker? Is he another, branch somewhere that's going after Red? Is he a friend of Gail's? I miss Gail, but I don't think he's ever coming back, but I miss Gail. It's tough to say. I mean, the more interesting Wrestler story for me is the dynamic that he has with Sia. And, the back and forth that they've kind of shared, look what the task force has done to me, what's it going to do to you? What did it do to your mother? That to me is a far more compelling storyline. But, maybe they move this Plant line, obviously I want to see who he is and who he's connected to, before I can determine whether the story is worth better than the Sia story.
Or they're building it up to a point where wrestler has to overcome something huge, and we're seeing is he able to handle whatever that's going to be, and is he going to be able to demonstrate his ability to stick to the plan, or is he going to switch and flex as quickly as he would during an addiction sequence? And is that driven by, is Sia going to be kind of like rock for him, in order to like prove that he's able to do something for the good rather than slipping and going back into more of a addictive state?
Yeah, I liked, I think, was it Eisendrath that said that wrestler's going to be one of the last men standing when it comes to determining Red's fate. So I like that. Wrestler's had a lot of arcs. Like you guys, I'd say his addiction arc isn't necessarily my favorite. Probably just ahead of his arc of seeming to go after every woman that works there. But no, I think his story with Red and their backstory, and I feel like there's still a piece to that they haven't shared with us. Whether they get into that or not, I think that there's more that connects them, than we know.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting story to follow is the 5 years that I spent chasing you before you came into this, then all the times that you spent tormenting Liz and not telling Liz who you are. Like, I almost think like letting Donald know who Red is, I think would actually be an interesting reveal.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that we're not really sure about. I mean, we're fairly certain that Cooper knows who Red is at this point, and we know that Dembe does. I just kind of assumed that Wrestler would have been let in with the rest of the task force, but maybe you're right. Maybe that's something, and maybe that's a way to circle back to it with the audience as well.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see for sure. But Sia, this episode again, we need to get her more to do. I really like, we like the poker episode, but it was kind of cool how she was kind of like good cop, bad cop in this one. Wrestler was just kind of poking around, doing his thing. And then Sia was just like, just give me the damn answers. She was very direct in her line of questioning. And then Lou, of course, gives up what he knows pretty quickly because of it. So I like the more forceful Sia. I like the more direct and a little bit conniving in a way than when she's just a paper pusher and a Herbie babysitter.
Yeah, it's a very different approach than I've already forgotten the previous character. Was it Park?
Yeah.
It's a very different approach. But no, it's as I say, for me, it's the interesting part of Sia is going back to why she joined the task force, what the connection is, what she finds about her mom, what she finds out about Red, her That's the more interesting thing to me. Otherwise, as you say, there's a lot of weeks where, with her and Wrestler, for the lot of it, her and Wrestler and Dembe are just kind of, running the case. They don't give a lot of room for that every week.
Well, I think the one thing we know is that Sia has really bad excuses, though, because I mean, that has got to be the lamest excuse I ever heard. That she had to do laundry to go to the bar.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that was very deliberate on her part of sharing just how little interest she had in it, and Herbie rolls with it. I would like to maybe meet his wife at some point so that we're not concerned about how friendly he seems to get with Sia.
It's a good point. It is a good point. It was an interesting exchange towards the end. She's like, like it almost seemed like she was like coming around to Herbie and initially as that conversation started, and then she was like, yeah, no, I got to go wash my hair. Oh my gosh, good stuff. Well, we got Cooper. He's checking in with the warden, as we mentioned. Finds out that Lawrence had a cellmate. Basically, that Lawrence, the warden, was basically telling Cooper it's a shock to him that someone would actually maintain their innocence as long as they did for that entire 25 years, which is unheard of, unless you know Andy Dufresne. And I think that was interesting, the conversation that they were having there, because obviously the warden now knows that, Cooper was involved. The big thing with Cooper this week, I just think it's very interesting, his conversations with Red and the fact that he was just so angry with Red, and yet he's allowing him to come into the kitchen table. And then, of course, lets him play chess with Agnes at the end of the episode.
Yeah, like I said, it was really jarring to me to see, the opening up on Red hanging out in his house already. Because I expected a lot more blowback. Clearly, he's compartmentalizing the two. Obviously, Red's relationship with Agnes is, separate to him from his relationship with the task force, and he seemed to deal with them separately. And I don't have a problem with that. With regards to Lawrence, I remember thinking the same thing. Is if the story was more about him, I thought the same line from Shawshank, where I had to go to prison to become a criminal. And there is an interesting story from his side to be told of, an innocent man who got forced into this position or who became this person because of that. And I guess that Red had a line. What was Red's line about that? Where sometimes we find ourselves in these situations. Oh yes, force is much greater than ourselves. That was Red's line. Lead us to criminal waters.
Yeah. I love that Cooper, though, at the end does let Red play with Agnes chess, right? It's math homework. So there's some sense of, I'm still doing this because Agnes is important to Red. He understands the connection between Red and Agnes. So Cooper's willing to look past some of the things Red's doing, but he did warn Red. He's like, this isn't going to go away. So we'll have to see what happens. And if Panabaker is going to come back into the fold in the next week or two.
Yeah, and it led to a nice piece of dialogue. I always like when people will throw in dialogue that means more than one thing. When Red's describing Red when Cooper's describing Red as a chess player. And he goes into he's very crafty. You have to think a number of moves ahead. And basically the whole series has been a chess game where Red has pretty much held the pieces and been 3 moves ahead the entire time.
Right. Yeah, he waxes politically that chess is a fair game because everything you need to know, all the information is there in front of you. But then Cooper says that Pinky can be very tricky. That's funny when he said Pinky. You have to think several steps ahead, and this was the important line, I think, was, and you will replay every move you made previously. Because when they deliver that line, the camera switches to Red, and you see Red just kind of sigh a little bit because he realizes again that it was really his fault that Liz died.
Yeah, I guess you can see everything there in the same way as I always say when they have a multiple choice exam. They give you the questions and they give you the answers. All you have to do is circle something. But it's not quite as easy as it sounds.
Well, I thought I would hate Agnes being on the show this year, but I really love how they're using her, especially in this episode. In the beginning, when Red's hanging with Agnes, I love that she calls Cooper Pops. I thought that was kind of cute. But she's basically telling Red about this game called Among Us. I'm sure many people in the audience have played it, but if you haven't, it's basically a premise of a bunch of your friends will get together in an online server room on a spaceship, and then you basically have to run around and do tasks on the spaceship, all the while keeping an eye out for the one of your friends who has become the murderer. All right. So that person can also go around and do tasks. He can also go around and sabotage tasks and, of course, knock off the other players. And the players have a conference. And then you basically say, well, I think it's the blue one, or I think it's the red one, or the green one. That's the quote unquote imposter. And then when they figure out who it is, they float the person out the airlock. So I thought it was interesting how they're literally saying this. And then Agnes was like, one of us is secretly an imposter, meaning Agnes and Red, who are currently present in that moment. This I felt was a traditional Blacklist line where you get some lexical ambiguity going on in the scene.
No, it's true. My favorite part of the Agnes involvement is that she wasn't kidnapped this week. I keep being worried about that. I don't know if I'm the only one, but as soon as Red told her to go to the door, I thought she was getting nabbed.
Oh, for sure. I was like, why are you going to the door by yourself? Like, stop. What are you doing?
And so, yeah, the fact that they didn't do that, I breathed a sigh of relief.
What do you think of Agnes? Do you think that they're purposely setting this up again? Are they telling you, hey, we already gave you the answer, like pay attention kind of thing in this scene, or what do you think?
It's tough to tell. I just don't want them to tell the same story with Agnes that they did with Red, or with Liz, I should say. That's all I'm mainly worried about, is that they, I don't want her to be kidnapped. Yeah, I'm fine for the family dynamic, and but I don't think, at this point, obviously she knows it seems like she kind of knows what's going on, but that's never been clear. Now that now that I start to think about it, I don't think it's ever been clear.
Yeah,
to
like,
what
like she
extent
doesn't
Agnes
know. Yeah,
knows.
we don't know if she actually knows who Red is, but she definitely knows that Red was important to Liz, and Liz was important to her, him. So just I think that there's like she has a general understanding that pay attention, be here, be present, kind of thing. Thoroughly enjoys Pinky's presence. So
yes, Pinky.
We talked about chess and Cooper's line. I think that a lot of this week was very classic Blacklist. It was a lot of good delivery, a lot of good information, a lot of good, what do you want to call it? Undercurrent or undertones. Very subtle in how they were delivering some of the lines this week. Really great job by Justine, I think, overall.
No, I agree. I thought it was well written. I thought it was well delivered. As I say, it's it's great to see Red engaged again. You have to overlook the fact that I don't see why he's still working with the task force. I don't see why he's still running his empire. The fact that he was kind of fading away made more sense to me from a storyline perspective, but was much less interesting TV.
So where do you think it goes from here? So we literally have a standalone episode. There's no thread or nugget other than is maybe Panda Baker going to come after Red because of what he did last week. Where do you think the show goes from here for the rest of the run?
It's really tough to say. There's lots of stuff that I think they could dig into in the origins. I think it would be fantastic to hear a little bit more about, but I don't think they'll go into it. I don't think they have time to go into it. I would love to go back to when Red and Dembe met, right, and explore the origin story there. There's all sorts of origins, and as you say, the origin of whether it be Wrestler and Red. Yeah, I would love to see that.
Yeah, doing one of those like traditional no number episodes, but like a retrospective of the past, like we did with Katarina.
Yeah, I think there's all sorts of opportunity there. I still don't really understand Red, kind of acting like a tourist with no protection and no phone for a while. I know you guys talked in the podcast last week about how you think that was all just kind of duping Wu Jing or duping the task force, kind of lulling people in. And maybe that's it, or maybe there's more to that. I don't really know. If they're going to dive into that further, but yeah, I mean, all I would like to see is some entertaining television and, to not kind of mess up the story that we loved so much that was told over the first 8 years.
I concur 100%. Do not mess it up. Do not change it. Do not wreck on it. Just finish strong, because this is really one of the more interesting television series that have been on in a while because of everything could mean something else. And I think that's really a cool concept in the English language, to have this lexical ambiguity. You say one thing, but it could mean something else depending on the point of view. I think that's really fascinating television at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I want to take a quick second to thank those of you who are supporting the show by going to Patreon. That's Patreon, patreon.com/the Blacklist GSM. Special big thanks to our honorary blacklister, Patricia. Also, special shout out to our task force members, Marilyn, Cindy, Jacob, James, Jens, Joanne, Johnny, Justin, Karen, Catherine, Richard, Sharon, Lacey Ann, Vanessa, Emily, all official task force members. All of these people received cool gifts from us, and you can get a cool gift as well for donating at the $20 level or higher. Do you want a cool t-shirt or coffee mug? Come on, you do. You don't have to stay at the $20 level forever. Just a few months to get the cool gifts.
And Chuck, obviously, finding the community at the later point in the stage. Patricia's website, blacklistdeclassified.net. You can find a link to her website on our website at the blacklistexposed.com. I can't say blacklist now either, Chuck. The blacklistexposed.com. Really, really great information. She's got the full scripts. She's got in-depth analysis. Patricia's done an amazing job over 10 years. It is literally the Wikipedia for the Blacklist. So definitely go check that out if you have not seen it. And if you want to get the podcast before anybody else, make sure you donate at the $5 level or higher on Patreon. Again, that's Patreon, patreon.com/the Blacklist GSM. Click the $sign in your podcast app. You can fill the fedora on the website. We'd really love the support for the final push. We got some more information coming up, obviously, right after the break. So stay tuned to close out the show.
You obviously love podcasts, but are you also a fan of movies and television? Do you want to listen to a show that reviews entertainment honestly and casts pretentiousness to the wind? That debates both film and TV topics in a fun, good-spirited way, while still getting to the heart of why we all love them so much? Then don't miss the award-winning weekly podcast, The Hollywood Outsider, now available on your favorite podcast app or at thehollywoodoutsider.com.
All right, Special Agent Intel, and I think there's really only one thing people were talking about this week because, man, did it make a stir over on Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. Instagram is where it all started, and that was from one of the directors that we've obviously mentioned many times on this show, Christine Guy. Christine posted up on the Instagram account pictures of the final shots, scenery, background of the show when they were actually wrapping up earlier this week. And someone on that post had asked, will we actually get the identity? Would it be revealed in the finale? And Christine was really super nice to respond to the fan and said that if you've been paying close attention to the things Red says, then you already know. Obviously, that's the reference to the identity. But there will be an exchange in the final episode that will say it indirectly. I love the indirectly. It's like, ah.
Yeah, I guess, it's always going to leave, a handful of camps, right? There are those that believe that the story was very nicely told and, laid out by the end of season 8. There are some that are going to want to hear the words directly. Sounds like that camp is going to be disappointed. Depending on what level of indirect they use, that may, sway a few more people. But I guess, as you guys have always said, it's, you can watch the show the way you want to watch the show.
I think that's one of the benefits of the Blacklist. I think giving the answer at this point in a verbal, direct way would be a disservice to the show. The show has always been about subtlety and pay attention, and the information of the chessboard is literally right in front of you. So you can just use the show to answer your own questions rather than having to, think about it any deeper than it really needs to be. Good news. The Futon Critic, a very reputable site in the TV space, they have actually released information regarding the rest of the season. So the air schedule is now posted, obviously subject to change, right? NBC could decide what they want to do. Many people are aware that there is a pending strike in the television world that could be coming this summer. I think there's more meetings that are happening starting on Monday. So, if there was some kind of a stoppage that happened, they could obviously pull these episodes and hold them to the fall, because obviously if there's a stoppage, then things that are being filmed for the fall wouldn't be able to be filmed. So, but tentatively right now, Blacklist is set to air over the summer, and we have good news and bad news regarding that. The good news is that you don't have to wait. Season 10 is going to just roll right on after Memorial Day here in the States. Not sure what's going to be like in some of the other countries as of yet, but in the United States, we're just going to keep going. And I think actually we get 2 episodes in the same week. There's going to be the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend will be an episode. And then that Thursday, I think June 1st, will be an episode as well. So that's going to be awesome. Yes. And that's the bad news. We're moving back to Thursdays of all things. It's like this show has had more nights over its run than I think any other show in the history of shows. But the fun part is that there will be a 2-hour finale. The finale currently is scheduled for July 13th here in the United States. There is also a 1-week preemption that will happen right around, I think, June 16th, 1, 7, 4, 14. I forget what the Thursday is over there. But sometime in that week of the 11th through the 18th will be a preempted week. And that was super nice of NBC because they knew that Aaron and I are going to be on a cruise that week. So it was totally done based on Aaron and I's schedule. So I really appreciate that, NBC. Super, super fun. Much love to all of you for not having just to figure out how to do an episode on the cruise.
Yeah, well, Boston Legal got moved around a fair bit too. I remember they actually, in one of their breaking the fourth wall moments, and they said, "Oh, see you next season." Like, same time slot. He's like, "God, I hope so."
Are you excited that you don't have to wait till the fall?
I am. Although, as I said, it's sort of set up if they were going to chase after Red. They could have called it the Hunt for Red October if they did it in the fall. But other than that,
Chuck was doing so well, and now he is not allowed to come back after that joke.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I've had a blast, but yeah, I
like the idea. The marketing campaign is brilliant, but
yeah, no, for me, I've been waiting for the end of this series for, like I said, 5 years now. So the sooner the better.
Awesome. Well, if you have thoughts on the Postman, make sure you go ahead and submit them into the Facebook groups and the Twitters and everywhere else to get a hold of us. And I think that's going to do the show for this week.
Well, that will conclude this discussion. So now is the time to recommend the Blacklist to your friend, enemy, or neighbor. And when you do, please also recommend that they listen to and subscribe to the Blacklist Exposed podcast. All the case profiles can be found at theblacklistexposed.com and everywhere great podcasts can be found.
For more great Aaron and Troy hijinks, follow us on your favorite social media outlet. I'm at Troy Heinritz. He's at Aaron Smirks. Together we are at the Blacklist GSM. Chuck, where can people find you?
On the Facebook group. It's probably the best place. I don't have much of a public presence.
Nice. Yeah, and Chuck does really great analysis. So if you're not part of the Facebook group, just go on over to facebook.com/groups/the Blacklist GSM. I believe it is over there as well. And you'll find that. Otherwise, there's links, obviously, over on the blacklistexposed.com on the page to find all the socials. And it's going to be an amazing ride here as we finish up season 10. So big thanks for listening. And don't forget to answer the profiling question. What did you think of Herbie's debut on the task force in the episode this week? Thanks so much, Chuck, for being here. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much. This was a blast.
All right. And then hopefully you'll see Chuck a couple times this summer because I know Aaron is going to be out. We'll have Chuck come back and we'll have more fun here on the Blacklist Exposed. Till then, we'll see you next week for The Man in the Hat. I think it's a no-number episode next week. Until next time, I'm Agent Troy Heinritz. That's at Troy Heinritz on Twitter. And if you want to learn more about me, just visit, about.me/Troy Heinritz.
And I'm Agent Aaron Peterson. You can hear me talking about movies and TV on the Hollywood Outsider podcast, as well as Remake This Movie Right. We are available at thehollywoodoutsiders.com or on Twitter at 5popcorn. Be sure to subscribe, download the app, submit your feedback, but most importantly, keep yourself off of the Blacklist.
The Blacklist Exposed is a Golden Spiral Media production. Find more of our great podcasts at goldenspiralmedia.com/podcasts.